You ever trace a name on a black wall and feel the same twist that the Vietnam grunt felt when Saigon went red? Same knife, different war. They told those boys they were holding the line against communism. 58,000 came home in boxes. 2 years later, tanks rolled out and Saigon became Ho Chi Minh City, and America changed the channel. We got told we were hunting the bastards who hit the towers. We did. Tora Bora, winter 2001. We froze our asses off at 12,000 feet and called in J-dams till the mountains sang like church bells. We broke Al-Qaeda's back before half the brigade even had up armor. Bin Laden got his ticket punched in 2011, just to close the file. Mission done. Then we stayed. We stayed for the Korengal, where every valley had a different name for death. We stayed for Marja, where we cleared the same canal lines 3 different years and got blown up by the same families we handed candy to the week before. We stayed for Sangin, where the Brits lost 1,000 plus holding a district the size of a Walmart parking lot, and then we took it and bled just as deep. We stayed for Cop Keating, where 50-odd brothers held off hundreds until the sun came up and the birds finally showed, losing 8 good men but stacking 150 of theirs. We stayed for every flag-draped transfer at Bagram, every ramp ceremony where the chaplain ran out of words and the only sound was boots shifting on gravel. 20 years of that. 20 years of knowing the next ridge didn't matter, the next school didn't matter, because the day we left it was all going back to the same fanatics we kicked out in the first place. And when the flag finally came down at the embassy, it was ours. Everything we paid for in blood, gone in 11 days. Same story, good men dead for the ground we never kept. A nation that sent us with parades and picked us up with shrugs. We loved to fight. Lord knows we did. But that clarity when the world narrows to 8 rifles and 1 heartbeat, nothing else forges a man like it. But you can love the fight and still carry the truth. That most of those years, most of those names that were spent on a war that should have ended in 2002. That's the wound that never closes. Vietnam felt it first, and we feel it now. Brothers died for nothing that lasted. And every morning we get up and we still wonder why. Somebody damn well has to say it, so we will. All right, guys. Welcome back to episode 8 of 11 Bang Gang.
That was really something, man. I almost feel like we could just end it there. Like, I haven't, I don't know. That was, you summed up most of how I've felt for the last 15 years, to be honest. That was really something. Yeah, I'm sure we're going to get into it, but, yeah, that was the truth, brother.
Yeah, man. I mean, the first time I read that, and I'll be honest, with everybody. When I wrote it and styled it the way I wanted it, I was driving and reading at the same time, yes. But anyway, I almost had to pull over because when it started talking about the ramp ceremony,
yeah,
that shit just choked me up, dude. And yeah. I was like, I'm not going to be able to read this.
Well, I appreciate you doing that and reading that, because I like that part near the end where it's like someone's got to stand up and say it, because someone needs to speak for the guys that can't, and who knows whether they would agree with us or disagree with us. You know, I know guys that are, some of my best friends would probably disagree with a lot of the stuff I'm about to say, and that's fair. Maybe not so much now, but definitely 10 years ago. But it's going to happen again. Maybe by speaking out and voicing our opinions, we can keep it from happening again, or keeping it from happening to somebody or somebody's kids again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard it some years ago, and I've heard it very often here lately, but I never heard it when I was in the military. Was it the last war that the U.S. fought and won justly, that was a just war, was World War II? And then I don't know how to respond to that, but I don't disagree completely.
To be honest, though, and even with that, we fought on the side of the commies in that war. We fought with Stalin.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, that's a whole rabbit hole to go down there too. But I definitely say that's the last war that we, at least quote unquote, won. I mean, Korea is still kind of in the same, is basically a draw. I still hear some people trying to claim we didn't lose Vietnam, but I think that's just cope. And then anyone who's trying to claim, we didn't lose Afghanistan after, watching after the Taliban let us leave.
Yeah. Yeah. And then and basically took the whole country over with everything that we left
while we were still there.
Yeah.
And the same thing with Iraq. I remember, what was it, 2016, 2017, when ISIS really swept across the country and, taken over Mosul and, cities that I had never been to because I never went to Iraq, but places I'd heard of and wondering, hey, I wonder how those guys who fought there and got injured there and lost brothers there, I wonder how they're feeling right now. And then getting to experience that just a couple of years later, watching the Taliban sweep across southern Afghanistan and then, encircling northern Afghanistan and collapsing in on Kabul. And like you said, what was it, 11 days? It's almost immediately. And it's funny. I think anyone who was paying attention and being honest knew that was the inevitable end to the war there. But to see it happen so quickly was still surprising. It was fast.
Yeah, I mean, I was just trying to understand, but I knew, like, I was following. There was I can't remember the name of the podcast, but they cover like the Taliban, ISIS. They cover any.
Is it the Boardwalk?
No.
Okay.
No.
Have you listened to those guys? They're pretty good.
No, I haven't. I haven't listened to Boardwalk. Yeah.
But yeah, shout out to the Boardwalk. I went and did one episode with those guys back in the day, but they were some intel guys that were based out of Kandahar for the most part, and they did some really deep dives into just all things Afghanistan for several years.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty. It's a pretty small show, but it's kind of they created quite the history for anyone who wants to go back and really deep dive, like all the players involved in the game.
Generation Jihad is the name, but they're older guys. But one dude's like a fellow at like some international war on terror or some publication. They're older guys. They're really smart, dude. They talk about like extremists in like Africa. They talk about cells in like, dude, they talk about cells in Europe. They're really, they're
I'll have to check that out. That sounds interesting.
But the problem is they don't talk about like the history. And see, that's what I'd like. So I went and read a book probably about last year, maybe, that covered the entire history of the Taliban, done by some Pakistani journalist that like embedded with the Taliban in like the early years. He spent like 20 years. It's crazy.
Was it No Good Men Among the Living? Is that the book?
Maybe. I don't know. But it was excellent. But it basically helped you understand that the Taliban, for what we see it today, wasn't what it was. It wasn't a bad organization.
The Taliban and people, I've gotten some interesting reactions saying this. The Taliban, the Afghan Taliban, is not and has never been an international terrorist organization.
Right.
They have certainly used terrorist violence within Afghanistan, fighting us and fighting other groups. But the Afghan Taliban, and which is different. There's the Tariqi Taliban, which is in Pakistan, which is a different organization. I'm sure there's links and ties, but the Afghan Taliban proper is not and has never been an international terrorist organization. Their goal was always to be the government of Afghanistan. They're basically an ultra-nationalist religious group.
Right.
And they're separate from Al-Qaeda. We're kind of jumping right in. I want to say, I could be I could be misquoting this a bit, but I'm pretty sure this is correct. That Mullah Mohammed Omar, who was the original supreme leader of the Taliban, was quoted as saying that Bin Laden and Al Qaeda was. I want to say the term he used was like a chicken bone stuck in his throat that he could neither swallow or cough out, and he was kind of stuck with them.
Yes.
In the
You,
country.
yeah, I'm not saying you're absolutely right, but the quote I recognize. Yeah, I don't know if I seen that in that book somewhere. Anyway, yeah, like first of all, Afghanistan will never work as a coherent government. The country, the culture. If anyone was there, you understand that is not. It can never be governed. That's why
Bro,
you
they
can
want to
never.
be a liberal democracy, man. Don't
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Well, we have to spread democracy, bro. That's what we do.
Everywhere. Yeah,
Everywhere.
yeah.
I mean, but like that country, it doesn't work. And like, so when I read Graveyard of Empires, which have you read that book?
You know, I'm familiar with it. I haven't read it
Okay,
cover to cover though.
it's it. If you want to fall asleep, pick a couple of
It's
chapters. It's
dense, huh?
dry, but yeah, it's not a page turner,
Okay.
but it's super interesting because I find history fascinating. Because
Yeah.
when you can do you know the book The Bear Went Over the Mountain?
Again, yeah.
Okay.
I know that name.
For the listeners that don't know, one of our lieutenants had that book, and it was great. So
is
it
that
was
about the
about
Russians in Afghanistan?
Russian
Yeah.
lieutenant wrote it, and he like mapped out the ambush sites in Afghanistan. And so then when U.S. forces were in the Helmand for like forever, right? They actually realized that we were getting in the same ambushes
Oh
that they
God.
put the Russians in the 80s, bro. Like
Yeah.
we were literally doing the same thing and getting caught in the same ways. That you can't kill those. I mean, you can, but I guess genocide works, but that we wasn't doing that.
Well, that's the thing. You're not going to win that war unless you just straight up colonize the country and
Yeah.
ship in 20 million of our own people and just ethnically replace the Afghans with
Right.
Americans.
Yeah.
Because it's like the Afghans love to fight each other, but as soon as somebody else comes knocking on their door, they'll join up with each other real quick to fight that person, so they can go back to fighting each other once we leave.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and I'm sure. Go ahead. No, you're good.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So like just to kind of throw a little personal story in there, I guess. So we showed up in Afghanistan, and my unit in 2010. I had just turned 20 years old. I was an absolute idiot, but you get all these in briefs when you get there and classes and stuff, and most of it's just absolute BS. But this one really sticks out in my mind, and it was just an overview of like what the hell is happening in Afghanistan. Welcome to Afghanistan. Here's what's going on here, and I don't remember who was briefing us. I think it was a female, but she just happened to throw out this one statistic that, so far in this hearts and minds counterinsurgency that we're waging, we had 92% of Afghan villages had zero contact with coalition troops. And this was in 2010, 9 years into the war. What seemed to us like, oh, we made it here before it ended, which is funny because it was actually in the first half of the war. 92% had zero contact, that nobody had waved at them yet. Nobody had driven by the village. And I just, again, 20-year-old retard, I remember thinking like, doing some quick math and being like, okay, so in 100 years, we'll have driven by everybody, every village here at one time. It's like, I don't know if that's a winning strategy. Seems like maybe that's not working very well, but
hey, we can go back to who was the last people to do 100-year wars, like the Romans?
I think the Brits were in Afghanistan for a long time, like decades, and still the same.
Yeah.
Back in like the 1800s, I guess. I mean, yeah, it's not unprecedented, but
do it.
And again, at the time, everyone was still thinking that Vietnam was like the long war because that one took a decade for us.
Yeah.
And so, that was probably the first little chink in my belief system that like we're the good guys doing the right things, fighting a righteous war against
The
the evil, the terrorists, that attacked us
the
and
evil.
whatnot. Um, that was kind of just the first indication to me that something is not right here.
When most of us join, and probably you included, so I'll just rope you in with all us other crayon eaters. We we were blindly patriotic, and I'm not going to get on the political side here. I'm not going to take political sides, but George Bush was the hero, right? He went
Yeah.
to 9/11. Everybody remembers the famous speech where he stood with the flag in the background
Yeah.
and the
Well, I
firefighters
can
were
hear
there.
you.
Yeah, man, I can hear you. Yeah, that I have watched that speech years
Oh,
since, and it gave me the chills because it
yeah.
was a great speech. I mean, if that didn't inspire you to go shoot motherfuckers in the face, then you're not going to find a better one.
Yeah.
And we went when we did it, and we were 18, and we were like, let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
And even in, I would say that I first heard people like Iraq was the first, right? I never heard anybody say, even in 2004 when I was a freshman in high school, 2008 when I graduated, I don't remember anybody ever saying Afghanistan was a mistake. But I remember people talking about Iraq. Iraq was
For a long
big.
time, they called Afghanistan, quote, the good war.
Yeah.
Was a phrase that was being used kind of after Iraq went, let's say, sour, but before Afghanistan had fully turned.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they called it the good war. Yeah, 100%, man. Same boat. Flag waving. That I mentioned, in the last episode, I was homesick and watched 9/11 happen, and it was. I mean, it's crazy that there's so many adults now that don't remember it, but it's indescribable, the feeling of that day and then immediately following that. It really was the last time the country was unified, and it's really a tragedy that that
That's what it
unification was
took.
kind of that unification was used to push us into
Yeah.
unwinnable forever wars that served essentially no purpose for the homeland. But yeah, that was something else. So I'm curious, by the time you made it into country, would you say that patriotic feeling was still front and center for you guys? Was it even present? How did that confer to when you actually were like boots on the ground?
So I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
Okay, so wait, 2011. I'm pretty sure I was still blindly patriotic. I can say I'm almost positive I still was, but I want to say that at that time, most people were still patriotic for the U.S. for Afghanistan, but if you mentioned that Iraq at that time was not. So like if we would have went to Iraq, you might have had some people say something. I had some older Marines that I remember saying that war was, they were like, yeah, we never found the weapons of mass
Yeah.
destruction. But again, those guys were still like, we did it for each other. We didn't do it
Yeah.
for whatever. And just to an aside to say that, like, that's how I look at Afghanistan today. It's like we didn't do it for anybody. We didn't do it for any politicians. We didn't do it for patriotism. When the bullets started flying, we did it for the man on the left and the man on the right.
Yeah. I agree with that, and I asked you that question because I've thought back on this, and I don't know if I would frame it in terms of patriotism or not, but I do remember that by the time we got to Afghanistan, I feel like there's a system in place to kind of make this transformation happen, but none of us we didn't hit the ground saying, oh, we're here to like fight this war, like for America and for the people back home. It kind of like the operating system that we were on in our brains had been kind of shifted to just thinking almost tactically about it. We're here to do a job, and we were bloodthirsty, pit bulls on a leash ready to be let off, point us in the right direction. And that was the thing, though, is we would have killed anybody that you allow us to. You point us in the right direction and tell us we're not going to get in trouble. Like, those people are going to die. But there was just no discussion. It was just completely out of the zeitgeist, if you will, that we're doing this to protect the homeland, let's say. There was no feeling that if we fail here, which didn't even seem feasible at the time, but like, if we fail here, there will be massive downstream negative consequences for our families at home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this isn't, don't take this as a personal dig on you or anything, but I really have a problem with the whole, like, well, we fought the wars for the guy on the left and right of it. It's like, yeah, at the time we did, but you know what? They didn't have to be there, and neither did we. And if the only reason you're fighting a war is because the guy next to you is fighting the war, well, guess what? We can all just come home and nobody has to die.
Right.
Would be my feeling on it now. And I think the fact that we could lose that war, I mean, on live television, in 2021, and have essentially no, the Taliban's not kicking my door down anytime soon, or yours or anyone else here in the country. We just like, oh, I guess that sucks. We'll leave all our stuff and go home. And then that was that. It's like, I think that almost like prima facie proves that we didn't have to be there in the first place, because there's essentially no negative impact of losing it on the homeland. Of course, I mean, I'm not commenting on the horrific and tragic deaths of those 13 Marines at the gate, and that attack. Obviously, their families suffered tremendously for the actual withdrawal itself, and continue to. But I think I guess it's just not good enough for me anymore doing it. And I have to always preface this. It's like, you throw me and my platoon back in Afghanistan today, and I'll fucking kill anybody I need to, so that we can go home alive. The team, but we could have just not. It's kind of my whole thesis.
I mean, did you? I guess I'll ask this question. Well, do you remember where you were when we killed Osama bin Laden?
So it was in between my 2 deployments, which was kind of interesting, because I deployed once while he was. Dude, my platoon sergeant, I love the guy, but we were down in Southern Helmand, and he was asking random farmers if they had seen Osama bin Laden. It's like, come on, dude. Like seriously.
He was trying to get that $10 million reward.
Yeah, man. And like, not ironically, asking them if they'd seen Osama bin Laden. It's like,
I will never forget that night. If I remember correctly, and I might be hallucinating, but if I remember correctly, it was late in the evening, and somebody called me and says, you need to turn the news on. And I was like, what? And so I turned the news on, and they're out there, and they're talking about all these people that are at the gates of the White House. And then it replays the speech that Obama, gave, where he said, we killed Osama bin Laden on Operation Neptune, which, by the way, if anybody's never read about that operation, it's great. It's a very interesting, the movies about it suck, but the books or podcasts that describe like the risk, like flying into Pakistan under radar cover with these helicopters that we never really used, and ends up one crashed anyways. But the whole thing was just great. And then I love the drama that no SEAL can figure out who shot him. But anyway, I digress.
I know, man. It's ongoing to this day. There's a lawsuit filed 10 days ago about it.
Yes, because the podcast that he filed a lawsuit towards, I listened to, but I also listened to some other ones. And I'll just say, for the record, I believe, so that none of y'all have to DM me and ask me who shot him. If you listen to, I don't remember what podcast it is, but there is a Navy SEAL that is very well known in the community. And he said that the number 2 man in the stack, or Yeah, I think number 2 man, Red. His code name
Red.
Red. He's
Yeah.
never come forward. He never will come forward. They talked to him about it. He said he doesn't want it. He won't get it, and that's what he said. So, for everyone else that says they did it, everyone double tapped him in the room. That's
Yeah.
SOP. That's standard operating procedure. But anyways, I digress on that subject. But I remember that, and I remember that like re-motivated us for some reason. But the question is why didn't we ask the question? And the question was, okay, we got him. It's over.
What are we doing? Right.
It's over.
Well, yeah, and I'll be honest, I probably don't remember exactly where I was because I'm pretty sure for every single night between my 2 deployments, I was blackout drunk. Pretty much so.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, we know where you were.
Yeah, there's a 10 or so month chunk there that I have very little recollection of. And got me almost got me in a lot of trouble, but managed to skate out of that. But no, so yeah, so that's kind of what I was getting at. Is it was 2 different sides of the coin with like doing deployment beforehand, and then the one afterwards was a little bit. Yeah, it's like, what are we still doing here? Like, what is the mission? That almost became an ongoing joke on my second deployment, which was, I spent a lot of time on the first episode of this describing my first deployment, and I'll just say the second one was almost the exact opposite. It was very almost not kinetic at all. It was a winter deployment. Very little happened as far as
where did y'all go on?
It was a bit of a different deployment. I'm trying to give a quick overview. So, flew into Leatherneck again, and then we immediately punched out to a patrol base. It's kind of more similar to how you guys were doing things. We went back into Sangin to patrol base Alcatraz. And Sangin was completely different at this point. They had literally put a PB every quarter mile down the Route 611, which is the highway that goes through the middle of Sangin. And you kind of mentioned this on the last show that once we kind of pushed the guys out of Sangin, they just went up to where y'all were at, a few miles north, essentially. And that's 100% true. I've heard a really good analogy about fighting a counterinsurgency like we did in Afghanistan. It's essentially like, the analogy I heard was like putting your fist into a bucket of water. It's like the water will move out of the way, but as soon as you pull your fist out, I would liken it more to a bucket of ice water where you're going to hit some ice cubes. It's going to give you some resistance, and it's going to make it so you can only hold your fist in there for so long before you pull it back. You have to pull it out.
That's a great one. I like that.
Yeah, it's so true though, because then, that's the biggest problem we ran into in Sangin, 10 months after it was a full-on minefield, was that we didn't have enough candy to pass out to all the kids. I would have patrolled it with a 9mm. It was surreal. And it did heat back up again in the summer, but we were there for like 2 or 3 months, like living in a PB, which is where the things just went off the rails just on a unit level for us. We had some just most horrific leadership. We were doing, it was bad, man. We were doing shave formations in a combat patrol base at 6 a.m. every day. And like the same briefing that they told us we were going to be doing shave formations. Right before that, they were like, the pipes are freezing every night, so nobody use any water before noon. In other news, we're also going to be doing shave formations at 6 a.m. And I tried to raise my hand and be like, could we wait till the pipes are unfrozen? Everybody just shut the fuck up. And so yeah, we were having to sleep with water bottles in our sleeping bag so we could make sure we were fresh shaven in the morning. The right priorities when you're in a combat zone, right? Yeah, and then the rest of that deployment, we kind of went back to Leatherneck, and I don't want to. I could spend 3 hours just going into all the pedantic details of it, which we don't need to do. They sent most of our battalion home and left my company with a couple of plussed up attachments, with just this absolute retarded maniac of a company commander, who was not a Recon Marine. I'll just add in there, they just threw him in command of all of us.
We talked about that on the last show.
Yeah, and we essentially they tried to find some jobs for us to do. We did some quote unquote like helo raids on just dumb targets. We did some counter narcotics stuff, which was pretty pointless. And then we really, they started sending us, this was kind of the bread and butter, I guess. They started sending us out to areas that had no coalition troops in before, those 92% of those villages. And that they really had no idea what was going on in. And it was kind of like show up there and like roll in. And if you get shot at, start dropping bombs and shooting back. And if not, then we'll set up some like health clinics and like pass out candy to kids. And the crazy thing was though, was we're going to these places and doing this, and we're sometimes getting shot at. There was a few gunfights. It just wasn't anything like our first deployment, but it was some IEDs went off. One of my best friends got blown up by an IED, but they buried it a foot too deep, and it pushed him out of the way instead of blew his legs off. And we roll in and stay for 10 days and do these missions, and then we would leave, and nobody would ever go back there again. There was no follow-on forces. There was no plan for follow-on forces. And again, I just developed this kind of attitude where I was like, what if we just fucking didn't? What if we just didn't do that? Because it was so clearly just this captain is just blowing anybody in the division he can to get thrown the table scraps of missions so that he can try to get promoted on our backs after this deployment. He can say that he commanded this many combat patrols and yada yada, just trying to have the stats. And it really put a sour taste in my mouth for the war itself, for honestly for the Marine Corps, for the whole thing. It was just like, this is just a bunch of stuck up college kids trying to earn promotions on your backs, essentially, when there's just there's no mission statement, there was no broader plan, there was no like, we're doing this, and then this unit's going to roll in, and we're going to establish control over this area. It was just absolutely pointless.
Man,
maybe we kill some people, maybe we die, maybe nothing happens.
That's the thing about combat. Combat's all about, if you break, if you ever hear them talk about like the combat, what the true like way, there's no true safe way to do it. It's all risk, but it's risk assessment. The whole Marine Corps talks about risk assessment. You
gotta manage it.
They're right. Risk management, the ORM or some stupid acronym like that. So, but the thing is combat's always a risk, and doing missions like that is the worst, because you're like, we're not, it's one thing when you're in, like you said, your first deployment to Sangin, where it's gunfight after gunfight, or at least if there are periods of peace or whatever, they don't last that long. And so then you're like, okay, every patrol matters, or every engagement matters. But when you do patrol after patrol, it's like that boat ride I did my first deployment, a Mew. I'm like, what the fuck are we doing? We're just floating around out here. I mean, y'all are just sending me to Thailand to drink beer at 19, 18 years old. You know what I mean? Like, and so that, I mean, and that's what I've always said about people who went to Afghanistan or Iraq and didn't see any combat. I'm like, that had to have sucked. Just be out there in the risk, and because you knew the risk from your first deployment, so you're like, one of my guys can step on an IED, and for what? For us to go to this village, do one Shura, and never see these people again? Cool.
Yeah.
Right.
It just made absolutely no sense. And again, without just getting into all the bullshit, there was just, we were taking so much flack from our own command over every little thing too. It was like, to stack that on top of just doing these missions, man, I can't put into words how toxic just the whole thing became on that deployment. You talked a little bit about Vietnam in the intro. It really, how do I say this without going to prison? It really, we really began to understand why so many, first lieutenants had grenades rolled into their tents by their own dudes in Vietnam. Yeah. It made a lot more sense. And because it was something else, man. But yeah, just again, just going on these missions, and we were being pushed out. The thing that really was eye opening as well was how quickly our commanders would violate our own SOPs just to throw us into shitty situations that much faster. And what I mean by that is they'd give us vehicles and then none of the radios worked, and we'd spend 3 days trying to fix it, and it's still not up and running. We don't care. You are leaving the wire today, whether you have comms or not. So like we're rolling around with like Vic 1 can't talk to Vic 3, but we can like
Oh shit.
just stuff like that where it's like I mean, unprofessional doesn't even begin to understand. It wasn't, and it's just the nature of the game, just giving us broken shit, and we sent all of our support of the battalion home, so we're fixing it all on our own.
And you don't know half the. Yeah.
I mean, some of it, we were pretty good. We were good at our jobs, but you're just not. I'm not a sales technician. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, but they would make and for missions where it's not like we wouldn't have sang it on the first deployment. It was 3-5 was getting fucking killed every day, and it was like someone's got to do something, and
Yeah.
it felt like, hey, we're taking big risks, but it's worth it because we're part of the greater effort, doing it for the guys next to you, because we are here whether we should be or not, whether that matters or not. At the end, here we are, so let's do the job. Man, it's really hard to describe how low the morale got on that second one doing these ops. It legitimately just had no.
Now, are they preaching hearts and minds on this second one, or did they even? I guess I should say, did they talk about it on the? Because they talked about it a little bit before we went to Afghanistan. That's why you had your dude that carries around a bunch of cash. You have your CAG officer assigned to every company, so that way he can do all the well digging and whatever other bullshit they come up with at Ashura. But, I didn't go a second time. So I guess my question is was there a difference in the policy? Now I understand there's a difference in operations, but were they limiting ROEs on the second one versus
that's
the first?
Actually that's a really good question. And it's something I've heard a lot of guys say, like essentially we would have won the war if they would have taken the handcuffs off and let us get the job done. And I wholly reject that concept, to be perfectly honest. And that does come with. I'll answer your question. Just give me a second. Our first deployment, we had slightly different ROEs than the probably most of the grunt units, the line units. And I don't honestly know if the ROEs. I actually remember. Maybe I'm a bit autistic. I remember the numbers, and the word for word, and I'm not going to repeat it because maybe it's classified. I don't know. But essentially, we had pursuit authority, whereas like if we had PID of somebody that dropped the weapon, but we maintained PID, we could still kill them. And dude, we killed anybody we wanted to in 2010. It was crazy. Almost looking back on it, man, almost to a fault. And that did change in 20. We deployed in 2011 in like November, but most deployments in 2012. And the biggest thing I remember is they changed the classification of civilian homes, compounds from dual use, which was both civilian and military. So in 2010, any compound was considered dual use. It could be a civilian home or a military base. They changed them in 2012 to being civilian only until you could prove that it was only being used as a military compound. What that meant was if you were taking fire from, let's say, the southeast corner of a compound, unless you could somehow clear the rest of that compound to make sure there were no civilians like in the rooms on the northwest corner, let's say, you couldn't just blow the whole compound up. You could only drop ordnance that would affect the southeast corner. So now we're trying to get into dropping bombs outside the compound that's going to spray that corner with shrapnel instead of just obliterating the whole thing off the face of that. So that was different. Now within our unit, there was really interesting, let's say, dynamic where, to be honest, that like 2010 deployment was historic for First Recon Battalion. Like people heard about it. Um, I never saw this email, but the legend has it that like what when we came back to Leatherneck after our first Sangin mission that I described in detail on the last one, like General Mattis sent out a division-wide email basically saying like First Recon Battalion is the most lethal unit in Afghanistan right now, and like don't fuck with them. Their haircuts, essentially.
If
um,
somebody has a copy of that email, let me know. That's a bitch to frame, dude. If
I
it
would I
legend
would love
has it.
I would love to see it, and like I mean that was my operating understanding is like that happened and that was legit. Now I didn't have
Yeah.
an email address. I never saw it. But and because of that, I don't know, everyone that wasn't a part of that kind of took command on the second deployment was kind of trying to like not necessarily one up it, but like recreate those circumstances. And so it just led to some fucking crazy officers, man. Get in there and kill everybody inside was something I heard at one point. It was like, no, don't do that. We're just gonna clear it like we clear everything else, but don't shoot those kids in the corner. Yeah, and so there's this feeling among, again, like really the guys that weren't there in the first one, like that we need to try to figure out how to kill people. And then at one point they kind of like we were getting laid into about some shit, and then they literally said like, oh, for some reason all you guys that were here on the last deployment, you just have like a chip on your shoulder or something. And it was like, yeah, motherfucker, because I was here 10 months ago walking the same streets doing this, and like the lessons we're trying to pound into your brain, we learned in blood. And um, again, I mean, it was just they would brief us like the Taliban has night vision capabilities now. In other news, you're all required to wear chem lights, IR chem lights in your in your right shoulder pocket while we patrol, and the first and last man's going to have a strobe on because you're going to bring all these fucking pogues with you that don't know how to patrol, and we don't want them to get lost, so you have to wear chem lights now. It's like, okay, so do they have night vision or not? Are we taking that into account or not? Yeah, so I think on the strategic level, yeah, they were pushing the hearts and minds things, but down, at the unit level, I mean, you know how it goes. Like everyone's just trying to fucking shoot motherfuckers, and so
Yeah. Yeah.
it
I think,
creates this weird
you
dichotomy.
know, you, what you talk about people, you said early in that we, that you wholly reject people that will say that they didn't let us take the gloves off.
Yeah,
Bro, do you know how many airstream flights are? Do you know what a HIMARS is? It's a rocket, or it's a missile, or it's something. It's some artillery thing. This the
high
size of a.
mobility artillery rocket system.
All right, there we go. The guy who studied some kind of combat handbook. So, I forget what HIMARS stood for, but we literally I told this story 1,000 times, but I'm not going to tell the whole thing. It's semi long. But what I will say is there was a super long flight kind of from Leatherneck where they fired these things from to where we were, which wasn't that far, but it was far enough to where you would be like, doo, 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 waiting on it once they call it.
Yeah,
And, well, we launched it on 2 IED inflators, and we watched both of those guys walk out of the smoke dazed and confused. I mean, it landed right on top of them.
yeah,
So however much that costs, 30, 40, 50 grand a piece, worthless. I mean, those guys walked right out of that. I mean, like the HIMARS was I just felt like that. I mean, that proved to me that it was like the gloves were off. But anyway, so your second deployment, I just kind of want to, I mean, unless something else crazy happened, I just want to kind of, you kind of described how you felt on that deployment. You leave, you get out. How much longer do you have till you get out after that?
So actually, I had to extend about 4 months in order to go on that deployment, which was cool. Kind of my core group of peers, all but one of us would had to extend to go on that deployment. And there was one of us that had enough time on his contract that he didn't have a choice, and all of us extended, and we all went back. I'm sure for various reasons, but there was a strong strain of like, if one of us is gone, we're not going to let these other retards watch your back.
Yeah.
And so I was on terminal less than 30 days after I got out of Afghanistan.
Cow.
Yeah.
Man, how much terminal did you have saved up? Was it like 30 or 90? I mean, I'm assuming
it wasn't that much. Maybe actually about a month, maybe a month and a half, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the only reason I ask is because, you know, a lot of people say that the reason that, and I'm not saying that this is the reason, I don't know if I wholeheartedly buy into this theory, but I do think it holds weight. Okay. So they say that the problem with the U.S. war machine now, and I semi-agree with this, is that you can be in Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. You can be in a combat zone. You come back to Leatherneck for a week. You get that cool down period, a week. You're still in a combat zone. You leave, you go to Kyrgyzstan for 2 days. You fly to Kyrgyzstan. You get your 1 beer or whatever, 2 beers a night or whatever with your ID card. And then you borrow someone else's ID card and you drink their beer. And now you've had 9 beers. And anyway, so then you go to Germany, you might hop to some other country, and then you hit Bangor, Maine, and then out of Bangor, Maine, those super nice old people that bake cupcakes, and God, that was such a surreal experience.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And then you're back home.
And then you hop that baby right back to I don't know where we flew into. It wasn't Pendleton.
March Air Force Base.
March, that's right.
Do you remember the drive on I-5 from March back to Pendleton?
Yes, it was.
Are those the other drivers? Why are they going so fast?
I'll just say this. The paid drivers that Pendleton had, for those of you Marines who were on Pendleton, and the other base, East Coast bases might have been the same, but Pendleton hired out these, I don't know what they were, civilians, drivers that they just drove us to ranges and stuff sometimes. We would take 7 tons a lot of times, but there were sometimes that these drivers would just drive you around base, and they were the slowest drivers ever. But anyway,
I remember that drive, man. You know, you're in country, you never go over 30 miles an hour for 7 months, and suddenly you're flying 80 down the freeway. And I was like, oh my God, we're going so fast.
Yeah. But I said all that to say is that it's fast. Even though I drug that out. That sounded slow. But in reality,
it's so fast.
From the time you step out of the sand on Leatherneck or in Bastion or wherever you fly out of in Afghanistan, it's literally days. Mm-hmm. Days. It's hours. I mean, it can be described in hours, and not even that many, like 72. And you step back foot into America. You sleep in your own bed. You cross paths with civilians that have no idea what you went through. And then you go home, and they send you back to your family who has no idea what happened to you. You're surrounded by people that just don't understand you, and then they expect you to deal with the trauma that you just had and just be normal. And I'll say the the opposite experience was World War II, when we had ships that took months to get back. Now you're on ship with your buddies. You're on ship with the guys who understand you. You're on ship with the guys who just went through the same things you went through, and you work it out for a month or two, and then you step back foot in America. So the war machine, I'm not going to say it creates PTSD, but it definitely, that cool down period is bullshit. And I think you can agree with me on that.
Yeah, absolutely. We kind of joked about it. Yeah, I think I might have been the first out of my peer group to actually go on terminal and get out, but only by, a week or so. I actually, I was roommates back in the barracks with like my best friend, and we were planning on, we were going to get out and like just go backpack around the world together. But he was getting out like a couple weeks after me. So I squatted in my barracks room for like 2 weeks after. Yes.
Dude, hold on. I just got a quick story about that. We had a guy who was, and I'm not going to name him, but there will be people who listen to this who know who I'm talking about. Love this kid to death. but he was a World of Warcraft um I don't even
Addict.
addict
Yeah.
fiend. And so Gunny, like, he got out on terminal leave. And like when you get out on terminal leave, you know, you're not supposed to be in your barracks room. You're supposed to have checked out with everyone.
Yeah.
Gunny found him in the barracks 30 days later, like grown beard. I don't even know. I think it might have even been after his terminal leave time. I don't know, but he was in there just chip bags everywhere, just playing World of Warcraft, dude.
Oh,
and
that's awesome.
And we were like, holy shit. Like, you don't have places to be. Because, you know, for the most of us, we couldn't get off that base fast enough when we got our DD-214.
Yeah. Yeah, it was funny, man. I was counting the seconds. I swear the Marine Corps has some kind of time warping technology that made that last 6 months just the slowest time of my entire life. But man, yeah, I for as much as I wanted to get out, I ended up just crashing with my buddy. We just kept playing Xbox. Except now I was like smoking weed, you know, off base. And I actually the day I EIS'd, I went and bought some weed from some dude under the bridge in Oceanside, and like came back and like smoked it at the pool on base. And I was in my barracks room that night, and I got this wave of paranoia, dude, like unlike anything I've ever had. I was like, because we had the new barracks doors with the key cards, and I had the door dead bolted. I was like, oh man, the dude, he's going to see that my door is dead bolted. He's going to know that I'm high, and they're going to call the MPs, and I'm going to get sent to the brig. And I was so close, man. I made it. Like, what am I doing here?
I didn't believe, I did not believe, and people are going to call me a liar for this. I never smoked weed from the time I was a young teenager until all the way until after I got out of the Marine Corps. So,
oh, good for you, man.
Yeah, I never tried it. But I will say, I understand what people say when it can give you anxiety. If you get too high, I mean, dude, you'll be like, I have been so I was at a party one time, and some people, this was before I realized that my tolerance was super low. So they're like, yeah, man, we're passing the joint, you know, everybody's hitting it. And all of a sudden you're just like, and then I like sat in the corner and I'm like, everyone knows I'm like stoned, but like no one's looking at you.
Nobody cares. You're not.
No one gives a shit.
Yeah. It's a real thing. But no, I think there's really something. I've heard that anecdote before about the troop ships. And the decompression time. I really think there's something to that, because and when you look at it, you know, almost no one is getting PTSD while they're in. And okay, you know, PTSD is obviously become like a buzz term, and I think it's better looked at as like a description of a group of, you know, symptoms that guys go through. And I know for me, you know, I struggled a lot when I got out, and it was never like, oh my God, I shot at people or killed people. You know, there was, or like people shot at me, you know, that was never, it wasn't like, oh, I'm scared. You know, that wasn't it. It was, you know, trying, kind of like you described, trying to adjust to the society where, you know, especially with the Afghan wars, like you tell people, you know, deployed to Afghanistan, they're like, oh, what part of Iraq is that? You know, you know, to where, you know, and I think it's more, I don't know if you've read Sebastian Junger's book, Tribe, but it has a lot more to do with leaving, you know, having been part of a tight knit group of dudes and then leaving that and having that stripped away from you, I think is a lot more of what's going on. And then I honestly do think there's a lot of the term they're using for it now is moral injury. And I think I personally struggled with that a lot more than I ever did. Like, oh, people were trying to kill me. And it was the idea that like I lost faith that I was on the good guy team, if you will. You know, if you look at it objectively, you know, we were in their country, dropping bombs on their homes, you know, killing their friends and brothers and kids and fathers. And if I was in their shoes, I would have joined the Taliban 10 out of 10 times. Like, no questions asked. I would have fought me to the death.
I did that. It's funny you should bring that up, because I was thinking about that earlier. The first time I heard it, I thought it was crazy. Like somebody said that, and they were like, and then I heard it again, And they were like, so if you were that age, if you were the age you were when you went to Afghanistan, you were raised there, like, think about how you felt about your tribe or your people. And they were like, now apply that to the other side. They were like, would you have picked up an AK? And when I really thought about that, I was like, fuck yeah, I would have.
Of course. I mean,
yeah,
we watched 9/11 and then we flew halfway around the world to go kick in their doors. You telling me if like 9/11 was happening every week in your town, you're not going to, roll down to the PB and throw a grenade in it? Of course you are. And I think that, that kind of combination of having the tribe stripped out. And I don't know, I had a lot of anger, if you will, I guess, initially about just how disconnected the rest of the country was from what was going on there. There's that like whole, it's like a meme almost, but before memes were a thing, where it was like, America's not at war, like the Marine Corps is at war, America's at the mall. And kind of getting back to what I was saying at the beginning of this, is like, I don't think that's justifiable for us to be engaged in a war that the entire country can be completely checked out of, except for this tiny population of dudes that's just deploying over and over and over again. It's like, what the hell are we doing then? Just stop.
Yeah, like, hey, it's funny. America only thinks about what war we're in on Veterans Day, Memorial Day, and and then in the beginning, in the intro, I like that part. They said that they sent us off with parades and they welcomed us home with shrugs. And of course there are patriotic Americans. You see a lot of them in the South where I'm from. There's a lot of people that are just genuinely patriotic. But to be honest, like, I legitimately was at something recently where some guy sat me down and he was like talking to me. He's civilian, never been in the military, has no ties to the military. But he was like, what did we do? Like, I mean, literally, like, he asked me, he was like, what did we do over there? Like, what was it all about?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, like, it just shocked me. It kind of took me back for a second, because I was like, what do you mean? What was it about? Like, of course, like, but then I thought about it, and the more I think about it and the more I read about it, the more I study about it, I kind of asked myself that question, like, there was a point where we could have walked, where we could have been like, okay, we could. I
mean, 1,000 points, in
the intro, okay, we chased Osama into Pakistan. Tor Bora, we knew he wasn't there. The Northern Alliance decimated the Taliban.
Yeah.
Or, excuse me, Al Qaeda, all the organizations, we decimated them. They left. They left.
Well, that was another brief, and I don't remember specifically when we got this. I think this was on my second deployment. But at some point they told us, they're like, all the intel that the US has estimates there's maybe 50 Al Qaeda dudes hanging out in like the Kunar province of northeast Afghanistan. And it's like, what the fuck are we doing then? It's like, yeah, there's just when you really take a step back, and it's almost impossible to see it while you're there, because you're just so in, like, sucked into your scope, if you will.
Yeah.
But and I think, and I don't know why this is the case. I'm not. It just the way it happened, man. I feel like I kind of started to see it earlier than a lot of guys. And for a while, I felt like I kind of ostracized myself. I was kind of a voice in the wilderness, just in my, because to ask that question in 2013 is a lot different than to ask it in 2021 or 2025. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And guys would get man, interestingly enough, like even like the patriotic Americans, kind of quote unquote, man, there's a lot of, patriots that want to come up and slap you on the back and tell you what a hero you are, until you start voicing some dissenting views on the war, and suddenly you're a fucking coward in their eyes. And like, you couldn't hack it, and you just, you probably didn't even see anything anyway, and like, and it's like, cool, man, you do you, like, but, yeah, I don't think it's justifiable at this point.
I mean, that's it. You're right. I see those keyboard warriors on X sometimes. When this question gets brought up, the question about Afghanistan, or the question about the just overall, like, was it worth it in Afghanistan or Iraq? you'll see the guys that'll be like, no, dude, we did the right thing, blah, blah. And it's just like, okay, but we can't have a civil conversation about it now. The hatred is gone, man. Like
Yeah.
the dudes that we lost, we grieved, we mourned. Yeah, we still do. But it's like at the same time, it's time to start asking questions of like, or maybe just float the idea of, was it, when should we have walked,
Yeah. And it's easy to, I guess, it's easy to pump your chest and be like, oh, well, these guys are just, just bitching and just don't have to quote Liz Cheney, daughter of, and not trying to get into electoral politics here, but daughter of Dick Cheney. She posted this on Instagram like 10 years ago that any of us that veterans that were speaking out against the wars simply lacked the backbone to see the mission through to completion.
Ooh, that's easy.
Almost a direct quote. I might have missed a word there. Maybe she said spine instead of backbone, but
I don't know, but still.
And but the fact is, when you really take a step back and look at the state of our country, of our nation now versus in August of 2000 or even in October of 2001. I mean, just within the veteran community, the amount of suicides, divorces, the amount of alcoholism, drug abuse, heroin overdoses, the kids, the kids that are heroin addicts because they didn't have their fathers in their lives because they were deploying 15 times in a row, or once or twice in a row, and then they came home and drank themselves to death. You know what I mean? Like, dude, I bought a used Tacoma in 2018, and tried to do a little research on that. I got the guy's phone number and typed in his Facebook just to see if it would pop up, and I found one post from the guy's wife, and it was a memorial for their son who got blown up in a Humvee in Iraq in 2007.
Damn.
And when I met him, he had a gold star sticker on his truck, and I debated on whether to say anything. And after we made the deal and everything, and getting ready to drive away, I was like, "Hey, man, I know what that sticker means. I'm like, I'm sorry for your loss, and like your sacrifice." And this was, 11 years later, and he just almost crumbled right there. It's like that dude's life, like I see it now as a young father, all the birthdays and the hopes and the aspirations and the dreams that they had for their son just ripped away by probably an EFP in Baghdad or something in 2007,
Yeah.
And same with, there was a guy in 2nd Recon who was killed. He was in the BRC class after mine. He was killed in the deployment after mine. And they had gone and done some, and I wasn't there. It's not my deployment. I didn't know him personally. I had friends that were friends with him in his same class, but I never met him. But I would watch there's a website, iCasualty.org or whatever. And when I was home, I'd kind of keep track on that, just like looking at the names, seeing what units, partially just like to any of my friends, but also just like keeping tabs on what units are where and who's getting hit and where's the fight going to be when we go back. And yeah, this 20-year-old kid got killed. He's like the all-star stud of his BRC class of every school he went to, and he was born 4 days after me, like 10 miles away, and his funeral was 30 minutes north of Pendleton. And this is kind of a tangent, but like no one from the unit, like our unit, our whole fucking unit should have been there, man. It's a small, tight-knit community. The whole battalion should have been there. But like we had to take, a couple of us took like leave for a day to go up to his funeral, just to have some kind of representation. And like, but there was the unit didn't even know what happened. It's like I just happened to find it on the internet. And we went up there and just see him, listen to his dad and his fiance is engaged, and then they found out who we were, and we were all in our blues and stuff, and they brought us to their house, and like his dad showed us his bedroom and his pull-up bar that he used to train in 2-3 years earlier when he was getting ready to join the Marines, and like they're never going to get him back. They're never going to have that life, that energy, that sacrifice they made to raise that caliber of son. It's just all for fucking nothing, and so it's like, yeah, I don't know. These guys can beat their chests all they want, but at the end of the day, we sacrificed some of the best of our generation in a lot. It's the guys that were, not only stood up and were willing to do that, but that actually died and actually, made that sacrifice. And it was squandered by our leadership and wasted. And they had gone on a patrol. I kind of got sidetracked. They went on a patrol and like took some pictures, and they got back, and the pictures had been corrupted or whatever. So they like went back with 3 dudes in the middle of the night to like try to retake these pictures of some bullshit in the middle of. And it doesn't matter. And they stepped on ID, and there's only 3 of them, and the other 2 got fucked up, and he bled to death in some fucking cornfield in Afghanistan.
Holy shit.
And like, yeah, not only does America not know and not fucking care, does it not matter? Our unit, they were second recon, we're first recon. Like our fucking unit didn't even know, in between Afghan deployments.
Man, you would think such a tight knit community would have. Man,
I'm
known.
Disgusted to this day that the entire battalion wasn't there. Oh man, it enrages me. On like a personal level, like it was just so. Again, it was just this is getting in the nitty gritty, but just dudes making a way stop, trying to make their career because it would look really good on their resume to be a platoon commander at First Recon Battalion or a company commander or whatever. Yeah, they didn't give a fuck. And there's a million of those stories. I mean, maybe not a million, but tens of thousands. And to be perfectly honest, it's the same thing on the other side. On our first deployment, when we were down in Sangin, basically no ROEs. There had been this like 15-year-old kid, Afghan kid, that like our guys on post had supposedly seen with a radio a handful of times, which was enough for us. So under the orders of the company commander, 2 of our snipers simul-shotted this 15-year-old kid in the head while he was walking down his not driveway, but pathway to his house, standing next to his mom and his dad and his little siblings. And they just executed him at like 150 yards, blew his brains out. My guys went and did half my platoon went and did a BDA on it. There's pictures. They said the screams from his father, something I'll never forget. And it's like, maybe he was spawned for the Taliban. Maybe they're paying him 30 cents to like radio when we left the base. I don't know. I don't really care. Like, talk about winning hearts and minds. You think that family is ever gonna come around to seeing us as the good guys? Like, did we win their hearts and minds when we splattered their fucking kids' brains all over them?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No, we didn't.
I mean,
they're gonna hate us forever, as they should. Because they love their kid just as much as we love ours.
They used to say that every time we killed somebody, that we just made more. Every time you kill somebody, their brother, their cousin, you're just, that's the battle of insurgency. Like it's a what is it called? It's a
Catch-22.
Yeah, but it's an ideology.
Yeah.
You can't fight an ideology. But we had to kill a kid too. I think the A&A actually shot the kid, but our corpsman tried to save him. He was running ammo. Yeah. And I remember that kid, like an 11-year-old kid in a wheelbarrow, man, and they brought him over, and it was just one of those things that I will never, for as long as I live, forget, because at that point I was just like, dude, like, but I remember rationalizing it. I remember rationalizing it like, if it was either him or us, that. Yeah. I mean, that rationalization.
Well, and that's what I was saying. Like, once you're there, it's too late. People are dying.
Yeah.
and them or us. It's gonna be. And if I have anything to do with it, it's gonna be them every single time.
Yeah.
But you got to come home at some point, and then we all had to come home at some point, and they're still there. Those families still don't have kids. Our brothers are still gone. Their parents still don't have those kids. And when the dust settles, if you better have we sign up in trusting that like offering our potentially up to our lives. It's so I hate the cliches, but some of them are true. You sign a blank check, up to and including your life, yada yada. And kind of the part of the contract is, in my opinion at least, is the people who are going to spend spend that check, better damn sure make sure that it's all other options have been expended first and that it's for something, that they're not just sending you over the line at the Somme, where
Yeah.
60,000 of you are going to get mowed down, by machine guns in World War. Obviously, and it wasn't on that scale, but
Yeah.
they
Have
they
you
they they absolutely squandered the sacrifices that we made and were willing to make.
yeah. Have you watched the TV show? And I know this is veering a little bit, but I want to tie this in. Have you watched the TV show? Come on, 2019. I just found it the other day. It was on Amazon Prime. It's called Chernobyl. It's about the Chernobyl disaster. Okay.
I'm not. No.
I'm not going to get too far into it, but if anybody hasn't seen it, it's a 5-part series and it is awesome. It is beautiful. It shows the bad decisions. It tells you exactly what happened. I mean, in detail. It's a dramatization, so it's a TV show, but it's all true. But anyway, my point is, at one point, the Russians realized that the reactor was open. The scientists had told them. They said, listen, this reactor is open, and if we don't fix it now, it will continue to melt down, and it will kill everyone from here to Germany. And so the Russians were like, okay. So the problem is the scientists, there were on multiple occasions, there were things that they had to do where they sat in meetings and they were like, how do we do this? Because it will kill the men that we send to do it. They knew at this point, the scientists had told them, anyone that gets near it, they won't live a week. Yeah. And they knew, they sent them boys in there knowing that was it. Like that they sent them to their death. They knew it. But the show dictates it in a solemn manner. And talking about this, I wonder if those conversations, like when you talk about sending troops in, we sign that blank check with the assumption that when they send us, it feels that way. You know what I'm saying? Like when they put us on the ground and they know that not everyone's going to come home, you would hope that same gravity is in that room when they say, yeah, we got to send them. Now, it's facetious to think that, but I would hope it's true.
I would have hoped it's true. So this is probably my most, I don't know, controversial story I'll tell. Kind of debated, but this is a perfect segue to it. You ever see that movie U-571 submarine movie?
Yeah. Okay. Classic.
Okay. Good movie. So on our first deployment, I kind of mentioned this before, but we were engaged a lot. It was very kinetic. And somehow, by the grace of God, we took a lot of casualties. There's a bunch of casualties I didn't mention on that first podcast, but my platoon had 23 guys in it and came out of this point with 18 Purple Hearts. Some guys doubled up, so it wasn't 18 guys that got injured, but 18 Purple Hearts. None of us died somehow. Out of the battalion, I don't know, I think we had 150 or 200 guys, something like that. Everybody survived. Here's the thing, though. You're a company commander of a infantry, or in this case, recon company in Sangin. Every unit around you is taking casualties in KIA. Well, let me back up for a second. Remember in that movie U-571 that I brought up, at the beginning, before they go on their whole mission, the guy thinks he's going to get promoted to be commander of his own submarine, and he finds out he's not, and he goes and he kind of calls out his commander, and he's like, the only way that wouldn't happen is if you recommended I didn't. I'd give my life for any one of those men. And he's like, yeah, you would. The problem is you wouldn't sacrifice them for the greater mission. Do you remember, the part I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And he basically says, like, I couldn't promote you. You're not ready to take command of a boat because you're not willing to sacrifice your guys yet. You're a company commander in Afghanistan. Every unit around you is taking KIA and your unit's not. From the perspective of your commanders, there's either one or two things going on. Either your guys are just that good, or you're not trying hard enough. As a commander, you're not willing to sacrifice your guys enough, and you're not sending them out enough to where they're getting killed like all the other commanders are. Okay. And it got to the point where our company commander was, there's not a doubt in my mind or any of my friends' minds that he was intentionally trying to get dudes killed because he was not going to get promoted when he got home if he didn't have KAs in his unit. They were straight up breaking every SOP we had. We were doing, I mean, we had a hard rule. We do not clear empty compounds because there's no one to talk to. And the only thing that's going to happen is you're going to get blown the fuck up. And I mean, it got to the point where it was like the helicopters to take us out of our last mission are like in the air. He's like screaming at a platoon to like get the fuck over there and clear that empty compound before they get here. Like we're like going home next week, and he's like, get over there and like clear that compound that we're watching IEDs go off in. Like they were desperate for some of us to get smoked so that they would, because like otherwise they're not trying hard enough.
Man.
And like I know that sounds crazy. It sounds crazy to me, but like, yeah, I don't know, man. You had to be there. It was insane. Like the you could feel the desperation that they had. That like they weren't gonna get to make major when they got back if they didn't get a couple of us killed. And so no, I don't believe Vince will get it with that same gravitas. Personally, I think that the machine just creates these psychopaths that it's just all about the next promotion or the next contract or the next career advancement, the next selection.
Yeah.
And I don't think they give a fuck about us, to be perfectly honest.
I mean, I want to believe, I do believe that not all of them were like that.
No,
Obviously, I
sure.
think there were a lot of great officers out there, but I'm gonna tell you, there were some people that were. It's just like if you listen to one of my other podcasts, I don't, you might not have to listen to this one. I don't remember who I was talking about with this, but talking about I think it was Graves, talking about the ND. That guy had an ND, and it was like the command was like, we have to tell.
We're gonna fry him.
Right. They literally, they wanted to fry him.
I get
And
giddy
like,
about it.
Dude, I'm gonna tell you, like, it was, on one hand, I understand, because your command said that this command, the major brigadier general in Afghanistan, said that all NDs are now, they're mandatory reporting. But at that point, it's like, then why at the local level did you even make that call? Why not just say, no one's going to know, no one got hurt, screw it. Like, we're not going to tell, because that's just like your kids coming to you and one's like, oh, so-and-so's doing this. And you're like, was anybody getting hurt? No. Then why are you coming and telling me? Unless someone's dying, bleeding, or choking.
Yeah.
Like, geez, guys. I don't know, man. That's a hard one.
I know I'm painting with a broad brush, but I'm just, speaking from my personal perspectives. And again, I'm kind of just telling my story too of why I just got so absolutely disillusioned with this whole thing.
You said on your second deployment that you had already kind of forged some opinions about the whole thing. So did you carry those opinions on, and did they just kind of fester, or was it kind of like you just stopped thinking about them for a while because you were a civilian, and then maybe later on you were like, okay, I'm making these opinions a little more educated, or whatever, you thought about them a little more?
I get what you're saying. It's a good question. I guess, thinking back about it, I guess I did kind of I tried to leave the whole thing behind me, I guess. Like I mentioned, my best friend and I, we got out pretty much the same time and bought one-way tickets to Europe and did a bunch of just backpacking and camping and exploring and venturing through Europe and down into Africa, and eventually went over to Southeast Asia for a while and just kind of adventuring. And it was, I get a little bit, nothing crazy, a little bit just like, partying and doing drugs and trying to leave the military experience behind us, trying to do something just kind of like reset, if you will. And I tried to go to school after that. I had applied to college on a sat phone. I did my interviews on a sat phone in Afghanistan, and then I got accepted and ended up deferring for a year so I could do that go do traveling and go on a trip and whatnot. Go be a hippie backpacker bum for a year. and I tried to go to school, and and I had it ended up that buddy that I'd gone traveling with and another good friend of ours who had to wait a little while to get out. We all got a house together where we were going to school, and all tried to go to school at the same place. And so that was cool. We're still like living together and like hanging out. So we had that support group, which was good and bad because it allowed us to it almost turned into maybe trap house is a strong word, but like curtains drawn. Eventually we basically just like stopped going outside and just kind of hung out with ourselves. And I dropped out of school almost immediately. I got into man, it's almost embarrassing to talk about now. I got into I was in like a public speaking class, and you had to like kind of almost like do these little mini debates and like pick a side of an object. And man, I didn't know what was happening at the time, but anytime one of these little idiot 18-year-olds would like disagree with me, which is part of the class, I would go into a full on panic attack and like heart rate spike. And it took me a while to figure out, but like the way we were taught to deal with conflict is you fucking kill it,
Yeah.
Locate,
Fight or
close
flight,
with, and
brother.
destroy the enemy with fire and close combat, blow it the fuck up. And so this kid would be like, I think you're wrong about this. And I'd be like, bro, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that. I would just leave the class. But like, in the red with my heart rate at 200 and like barely able to breathe. It felt so ridiculous. I thought school was going to be so easy, and I couldn't do it. And then, at some point after that, so I ended up moving in with another buddy that was one of the guys that got blown up in that IED explosion. Moved in his spare room, and somewhere around then, so maybe a year or two after I got out, I just, it's not that I became obsessed with it, but I would check the news on what was going on in Afghanistan, every day sometimes. What's going on in Sangin, what's going on in Marjan Tripnel, and we kind of followed the war as it devolved and as we slowly lost it. And that's my perspectives shifted from, my commanders are idiots and they're going to get us all killed, more towards like kind of what I was saying. Like, I think we were morally wrong to be there in the first place. I don't think even these guys were shooting at us because we were there killing them. And I don't think they were wrong to do that. I think that they honestly, like, not that I agree with their lifestyle or like would want to be in the Taliban or anything like that, but they were defending their home and we were literally on the other side of the planet. I mean, Afghanistan is a 12.5-hour time difference from the West Coast. It is as far away on the planet as you can get before you just come back around the other side again. So that's kind of when my views kind of shifted more towards like we were essentially we were the bad guys and had no business being there in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, I that's one of those things where you're like, as time went on, I remember seeing Muskela, that Taliban took it over again. This was before the total withdrawal.
Yeah,
I remember one of my buddies sending me a link and they were like, hey, all the things pulled back out of there. Taliban moved back in, implemented strict laws. They were talking about how the women couldn't have cell phones anymore, like that whole Washington Post kind of article. And I remember just feeling defeated. And I was just like, and that's when it started for me, because I was just like, I remember talking to one of my buddies and being like, what the fuck, dude? Like, what, did we do anything? Like, did we?
Yeah.
But as that time went on, I'm like, okay, well, let me go read about like how this all really got started, instead of believing the 9/11 sugar cookie American flag flying version of events. Let me go read like the real story, and then you go down that rabbit hole. Look, I love a good conspiracy theory. So WTC7, the whole 9/11, was it an inside job? Because I told somebody this a while back. When in 2012 or 2011, 2010, it didn't matter. Anytime around in there, if you would have told me 9/11 was a hoax, I might have been like, tried to fight you.
Straight up, man. Yeah, those are fighting words.
Yeah, like my brother died for this, dude. Like, this is not a joke. This is not a fucking conspiracy. But the older I get, the more I'm like, I wouldn't put it fucking past the government.
Not one bit, man. And I'm gonna consciously not go down the conspiracy rabbit hole because I'm a crazy dude that lives out in the middle of the woods on an off-grid homestead. Like I could go for a while, but yeah. Well, really, what it is, I think once you see the lies, that you got to personally experience in Afghanistan, and just seeing that like what's going on the ground there just has nothing to do with what they're talking about on CNN or on Fox. Pick your poison, but like
Yeah.
whatever they're telling people here is just not has it's a different movie than what's going on over there. And you just lose faith that like, yeah, that they at their core, they have our best interests in mind. And they might get it wrong here or there, and they're going to make some mistakes because they're humans. It's like debatable.
Yeah. we're the best intelligence in the world. Like, but we
Right.
couldn't get that right. Like,
Yeah.
we couldn't find Osama bin Laden for what, 11 years or 10 years,
yeah.
a decade. When it finally came full circle for me, I guess I put in a Freedom of Information Act because I needed a VA claim, but I needed to prove something happened. So I put in a Freedom of Information Act. Yeah, for every single combat action report for 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines. I went on the 2-4 page. I said, hey, guys, if anybody needs these when I get them, if you need to help prove a VA claim
they
or
give
something.
Them to you?
Oh, buddy, wait till you hear this. 1 year later, I get a phone call from a major in Washington, D.C., and they're like, we don't know where. No. Let me back up. 1 year later, I realized that it's been a year.
Yeah.
And so I then contact a congressman because one of my family members works in Washington, D.C., and she was like, you should contact this person. So I contact my representative from my area. I send him an email. They call me. They say, hey, what's up? And I tell them the story. I give them the Freedom of Information Act. They say, we'll push it on our end. So then a major from the Pentagon calls me and says, hey, sir, what can we do for you? And I'm like, wow, I got a major calling me, sir. I've moved up in life.
Yeah. doing pretty good these days.
Yeah. So, and they can see my records, so they know I was a sergeant. Anyway, so they tell me, we have no idea. We don't have them. And I'm like, hold up. So then they put me in contact with 2nd Mar Div, who was in charge of Afghanistan during the time. I talked to like 4 different officers on both sides of the country, and guess what? They don't exist. Because do you know what we did with every single combat action report? We threw them in the fucking trash.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. So you know what I told myself after that? I said, we pride ourselves on learning lessons from each war. And this just proves why every lesson we learned in Vietnam, every lesson we learned in Korea, every lesson we learned in World War II, every lesson we learned in every war, written in blood, is relearned in the next conflict because we don't remember.
Oh, dude. I'm not particularly surprised by that, but it doesn't make me any less angry about it. It's like, I mean, why would they hang on to all the reports about how we lost a war for 20 years? I mean, I'm gonna think about that for a while, man, because it's such a it really epitomizes the whole thing. Because like at the end of the day, it's just words on paper to them. Why not throw it away?
Right. All the WIAs,
crazy, bro.
All the WIAs, all the KIAs in those reports, all the names, all the blood that was spilled.
Yeah. Well, and
that was my moment. Yeah, no, you get it. But that was like my turning point. That's where I was like, okay, I'm pissed now.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Like for whatever reason, maybe I was just too sensitive. I don't know. Like it just got to me. Yeah. Like, I mean, I was still like I was checked out. I mean, I was still doing the job, but like I'm no longer a true believer by like the 3rd month of my 2nd deployment. I was like, this is all bullshit. And I kind of made it my mission to just throw as many wrenches in the gears of the machine as I could. Cause it was like, again, like we're just in my mind, the best thing that could happen is like, we just don't die on this deployment.
Right.
Which I think I've been vindicated by that by now, is like, Yeah, I mean, they threw away all your reports. Nothing changed. No, nothing. There was nothing we could have done that would have had a beneficial impact. So it was like, my thing is like, what if we just don't go? Like, what can I do to just make the literal like wings on the helicopter not spin, so we don't have to go do this bullshit? Which almost got me in a boatload of trouble, but I didn't care. And it was. I guess, man, I lost a lot of friends. Like a lot of guys, I don't talk to them anymore because like I was just that thorn in the side. I was a pain in the ass. I was like, this is fucking bullshit. And like one was like, you're just not cut out for this. I'm like, maybe you're fucking right, man. It's like I'm not afraid to like. It's not like I'm not afraid to die in combat. I volunteered to go back to combat. On a second one. I just didn't want to die for fucking nothing. I didn't want to watch my friends die for nothing. That's what pissed me off.
I'm going to approach this we're going to have to keep this short. So you're going to have to answer this question and keep,
okay.
Because we can go down a deep rabbit hole.
Okay.
The Golden Triangle.
I'm talking heroin.
Oh yeah.
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 I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, that the whole war in Afghanistan coincides with the explosion of the heroin epidemic here at home.
Yeah.
Although they say that Afghan heroin goes to Europe, but I mean, you increase the supply globally, it's going to go somewhere. Man, can I tell you a quick story about that?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Because we did some counter narco stuff, but
that's why I asked.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not one of these guys that like, people are like, oh, they're guarding the poppy fields. It's like, it's more complicated than that. There was decisions made at the unit level to not go after poppy fields and to target it higher up the food chain at the processing plants, whatever. Because basically the Taliban would like kill the farmers if they didn't shoot at us when we burn their poppy fields. So it really just put like the locals in the crosshairs on both sides. I'm not saying that there wasn't. I'm sure people in the CIA or the DOD or whatever made a boatload of money off of fucking selling heroin somehow, way or another. But anyway, I mean, I don't know if you know this, but like the Taliban outlawed heroin production, and it had cut it to just about zero in the year 2000 and 2001. There was essentially functionally no opium or heroin coming out of Afghanistan. And then when we invaded, they kind of lifted the restriction for the purpose of funding their war effort.
Right.
And if you look at the graph, it just skyrockets. But my personal anecdote is we made a drive from Leatherneck down to, oh man, I'm going to forget the name of this patrol, to like the southernmost FOB in Helmand at the very southern, near the Iranian border. LAR was posted up down there. And so we drove down there in 2010, first deployment. And it was like 90% just like open farm, or not even farm, open desert. You could take a picture and drive for 10 hours, take another picture, and you can't tell the difference between the two. You go through some villages and some towns and stuff. We made that same drive, with some variations, but we had the GPS, and it was like more or less the same route, 11 months later in 2011, and it was poppy fields as far as the eye could see. And we ended up doing some quote unquote like raids on some of these little operations that were going on. And the Taliban was going through the cities, Kabul, whatever, and gathering up homeless dudes. And they'd drive them out to the middle of the desert. And the water table in Afghanistan is really high, at least in southern Afghanistan. And they would drop, 10 dudes off with like some drilling equipment, essentially. And it's like some fucking shovels. And we found like a PKM, some AKs. And they'd like drill a well, start growing poppy. Like, you owe us this much poppy at the end of every season. The rest is yours. And like, this is your land now. Like, welcome to your new home. We'll be back in the harvest season. And they did this. And I mean, again, this like multi-day drive went from barren desert to poppy fields as far as you could see in less than a year. It was insane. Yeah. And so, somebody's getting rich off of it.
Somebody. I mean, I've also heard it put like this, that they said that like the money that the locals would make versus growing poppy versus, even if the Taliban didn't force them, it was just money. Like, I mean, the crop value for what they could have grew versus poppy was just, any American would be like, that's capitalism, bro. Like, I mean, of course you would choose the one that would best provide for your family. Like, what would any other guy do?
Yeah.
So I never blame the locals for that. I was just like,
no,
it is what it is, man.
No, they're just trying to survive, man. They don't have shoes, dude. Like, they don't have anything, man. But like, something I do want to throw in here, because speaking of the money and the sacrifices that we as a nation made for this folly. You hear the numbers that get thrown on, like how much was spent on the war overall, and there's 4 trillion, 6 trillion, a lot of money. But like, I've done the math, and when you really break it down, how much do you think we spent as a country per day, every day, for 20 years, from 9/11 2001 to 9/11 2021? Just in Afghanistan, just on the Afghan war, how much per day?
Man, that's a great question. I used to think it wasn't that much money.
Okay.
And then when I went to the air wing,
yeah,
I worked in taking helicopters apart.
Yeah.
And when you go in a system, I can't remember what it's called, but it doesn't matter.
You start seeing the parts.
Oh, my boy. Yes. I see how much parts cost. And so if you add that in, it's an insane number.
Yeah,
just to keep. So I will take a stab and say it had to have been at least $1 million a day.
Bro.
But I'm assuming I'm way off.
$300 million a day, every day.
God damn.
From 2001 to, and that's just Afghanistan. If you factor in Iraq, you're pushing $975 million a day. We'll just do a slight round, $1 billion a day. And so, I'm not we don't have that money. Well, so like, when you go to the grocery store, you're like, man, shit's really expensive now. That's why. It's because they blew up the entire economy and put us trillions of dollars into debt so that we could, bomb dudes without shoes on the other side of the planet for 20 years. But man, every time you hear like of a budget squabble, with, and again, I'm not picking, I think they're all fucking corrupt and evil. So I'm not picking sides here. But when you hear, they need 20 million for this or 10 billion for that or whatever, and they're arguing over numbers, like, you ever once hear them argue over how much they're going to spend, giving Lockheed, how much they're going to give to Lockheed Martin to, again, make GBU 38s or whatever to go drop on the, by the time, you know what a gallon of diesel costs by the time it got to us on the ground over there?
No, I'd like to know.
$650 fucking dollars. Think how many hours you left your trucks running, just idling.
Just running, dude.
Yeah.
Just running.
Yeah. And that money's going to somebody, someone's making that money. And that's why the 5 like counties just surrounding DC are like some of the absolute richest in the country, because those are those fucking lobbyists for the weapons manufacturers that tore down their $1 million homes and built $20 million homes, on our backs.
Who was it that said that war was a racket?
Smedley Butler.
Okay, that's what I thought.
2-time Medal of Honor. They don't teach you that in boot camp, though.
Tell you he was a 2-time Medal of Honor recipient, but they don't tell you that he told you that this whole machine was a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, he quote from his book. It's on my bookshelf behind me. That's why I looked back there. Is that he was a gangster for capitalism, which, to be fair, he was actually kind of a fucking commie a little bit. Not full on, but he was kind of a socialist.
Yeah.
But I think he nailed that, and that the war is a racket.
That's one thing that I got into later on. Like, so after I had gotten out of the military, after I kind of come to terms with the war, after I come to terms with everything, then now I'm just on the military industrial complex. And I agree that there is a line between we have to be the best, right?
Yeah.
National defense and whatnot. But then there's this whole thing where it's like, when is too much too much? You know what I'm saying? That it's just, I don't know, where does it end?
You know, a buddy of mine posed an interesting question to me one time, and it kind of caught me off guard. And his question was like, okay, like, let's assume, because this was kind of, I don't think Afghanistan had fallen, quote unquote, yet during this discussion, but it was becoming readily apparent that like things were not maybe as they seemed. And he asked me, he's like, well, what if this whole thing is really just a way for us to essentially hone our edge as a military? It's basically live fire target practice for when we have to, if we ever have to go to like a real war with, say, China. And my initial response was like, well, that's just fucking evil, you know? So like, fuck that. But the more I thought about it, it's actually worse than that, I feel. Because the war we were waging, I mean, look at the war in Ukraine. I see the stuff coming out of Ukraine, and it's like, oh, I've never seen a single day of combat. You know, it's like those things are real war, and we were not. So like, you know, any war with a near peer conflict, like, you're actually gonna have your radios encrypted, and like,
both sides have NVGs, both sides have IR. So having that IR laser, and it's like no one can see it. Well, guess what? Now it's bullshit.
Now, now you're going passive NVGs. It's exactly. And just also that whole thing is like, we didn't perform, you know, as a military clearly well. I mean, mission to mission, we did okay, I guess, in Afghanistan, but like strategically, it was a fucking disaster. And then, you know, it's, dude, we're obsolete now. You know what I mean? Like, have you seen what what a standard grunt is rocking in the Marine Corps these days, dude? They're all running dual tube NVGs with HK-46. I mean, they look like fucking SEAL Team 6 from when we were in. The high cut helmets and everything. But now it's all drones, you know? So it's like, even that idea that, you know, the war, I even reject this idea that, you know, the war kind of was good training. The only thing maybe that came out of it is like the medical training, and combat medicine now is far superior than what it was, you know, obviously 20 years ago. But
I think testing our air superiority, like, you know, ground to, you know, air to ground.
I mean, we got really good at CAS in an environment where there's no air to air threat, you know, throw a couple, you know, MiGs or Su-57s or whatever in there, and
a whole different game.
Yeah, you're not running Warthogs, you know, or Hueys around anymore. You know, they'll be shot out of the sky on day one. But I mean, I'm sure we pulled some things out of it, but fuck, man, they destroyed all your records. Not really.
Like, we wouldn't know. I mean, you know, I didn't read the whole thing because I think the whole thing is like 1,000 pages, but there's some like complete report. So after the fall, I remember
the Afghan papers, they called it.
Yeah. I have listened to multiple interpretations of it. I've read through part of it. And to be honest, like, the parts I've read out of it, I was just disheartened because I was like, you guys missed the point.
Yeah.
You missed the point. Like, the point. You're not
seeing the forest for the trees.
Yeah. Like, my point was, in the whole thing, we never understood the culture.
Yeah.
We never understood that you can't democratize this. You can't build an army. These people aren't cohesive. Like, a lot of people don't know that the Pashtuns never lived in Afghanistan. They lived in Afghanistan and Pakistan until British drew the Duran line. That was a community, and now they're split between two territories.
Man, have you heard of this book called An Intimate War?
Yes.
Yeah. It's okay. So it's by a British. He was on the ground commander. I forgot what rank he was. Have you read it, or have you checked it out?
Partial. I haven't.
Yeah, it's dense. It's dense, huh?
Yeah, it's dense. Very dense.
But yeah, his whole that's cool. You found that. It's hard to find. His whole thesis, for anyone who hasn't listened, is basically that the war in Helmand, like, there's no such thing as, like, quote unquote, like, the Taliban. It's basically slang. And And the war in Helmand was going since like 1983. It was an intra-ethnic conflict that we just stumbled into the middle of, and yet never understood who the teams were, and we were just one more faction in an already ongoing civil war that they had just had to kind of deal with on the side while they were still continuing to fight each other along with us.
Here's what I believe now. This is my complete, I think I've put the top on it.
Okay.
What we did, what the CIA did with Delta or the Green Berets in 2001. I don't know which
I think they were
special
all there.
forces. Yeah. What those guys did was the correct way to do it. They worked with the allied forces that were there. Granted, we had to make allies. So we went in, we found the Northern Alliance. Granted, we had to pay some people. We had to, I mean, I don't know if you've read any books about that, but dude, they had the CIA when they went in there, the dude had 2 giant boxes of cash, like $1 million.
Oh, dude, they were doing that, and they'd roll in with pallets.
Yeah.
Man.
But he said that when they originally went, like legit first CIA team on the ground, he said we had $1 million cash. And he said, I've never seen that much money in person before. He said that like we didn't even know what to do with it. And he said, but we didn't want to hide it in plain sight because we didn't want people to know. So he said they literally made boxes and they made it a coffee table. And so people that walked into the office would never know there's $1 million that they were sitting their cup of coffee on. Yes, I swear to God, dude.
I believe it,
and
man.
It's in a book. I don't remember what the name of the book is. But anyway, my point is what they did, the way they destroyed it, the way they kind of, I'm not going to say they understood the culture, but they worked with the culture they had.
Yeah.
And they destroyed the majority of Al Qaeda. And then we just kind of forgot about it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like we didn't, if there was any point to have said, let's set a plan, like now, like right now, we just didn't do it. And then we just kind of went to Iraq and we were like, fuck it, you know?
Yeah. It's almost like the banality of evil, man. It's like, by the time we went there, you know, they're just rotating in commanders and like nobody wants to be the guy to pull the plug on the whole thing, you know, and nobody wants, you know, everyone's got to just write a report, you know, trying to, I feel like I'm beating on this too much, but like, you know, they want to get their promotion. They want their guys to get their promotion and their medals. So like, hey, we conducted, you know, 87 KLEs and so many significant acts, and like the atmospherics have improved this much by 20% since we've been here, blah, 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 blah. And everyone, you know, is just writing the same report and sending up the ladder. And no one has the balls to be like, this is not fucking working. I mean, by the end of it, they said that the ANA had 300,000 troops on their payroll, and there was like 20. Like they did literally an entire army that did not exist.
It vaporized.
Yeah, it just gone. And I mean, like, good on them. You know, like they would have been. Man, there's so many. I mean, there's so many threads to pull in here. I found this one report. It had to be 2016, 17, 18. That's when things really went to shit in Afghanistan. And it's kind of like, and, you know, we had the surge, and then that kind of went through like 2014, and then most of the Marines and everything pulled out. Some soft stuff remained, but like 2014 to 18, 19, there wasn't much going on, at least down in Helmand. And then after that, like 2019, we actually started sending a bunch of like Rangers and Marines back in because things had gotten so bad. But I found a report it's out there, it's declassified now, but they were estimating, I think 65-ish on average, ANA, AIA, so Afghan armies, soldiers being killed every day, like 60 for like 2 years in the 20-teens. I mean, just thousands and thousands. They were just getting fucking slaughtered, man. And like it never once made the news here because that would look really bad. You know, I had to dig for that.
There's a book I have on my nightstand right now about that. It's called, I'm going to have to send it to you. I'll put it in the show notes, guys. But it's something about like the Special Forces War or something, but it's around that time. It's like based off that time frame. And it's like when we started ramping up the Special Operations War because they started losing shit and they were like, oh shit. Like, but they didn't realize it until it was too late. And
yeah, we weren't holding territory anymore, but Americans, but they were, JSOC was doing, raids every night. But to no avail, man, you can't kill. You'd have to kill the whole country.
Yeah.
And I'll throw in one more good story for anyone who's stuck around this long, if you
Yeah.
don't mind. And just it's to illustrate a point. And you made this point on our last podcast that like we kind of flooded Sangin with dudes, and then it just pushed them all up to you guys, which is absolutely true. And we went on a mission on my second deployment. And this mission is kind of the exception to what I said that it was a not eventful deployment. Just kind of wrap my whole thesis tonight together, maybe with this one. And of course, there was a bunch of bullshit with our command. We didn't have any input in the mission planning, which is again just not the SOP. Like in our we're supposed, we're the ones going on the ground. We're supposed to plan the mission, and the guys doing it were not. They weren't shooters, man. They didn't know what they were doing. So one of the big issues we had is like we're doing this helo, hell attack, hell assault, whatever you want to call it, and there's no alternate insert points, no alternate anything. It's just like, we're gonna land here. And oh man, this is a crazy story. I was one of my kind of ancillary jobs in the platoon was I was the platoon intelligence representative. So I would go to the intel briefings, and then I would come back and brief my team. There's two of us in each platoon, but we brief our team like, hey, here's what's going on. So I was in the intel briefing for this mission, and our intel guy told us that there were some bad dudes here, but they have left the area for the holidays or for Ramadan or whatever. So we fully, you guys should really just expect to like walk into an empty village and like there's nothing going on. And I remember that very specifically, A, because of what happened, and B, because you just don't fucking tell dudes that. Like, even if that's what the intel, you don't tell people that. You don't tell your shooters that like, it's all good, bro. You don't have to worry about this one.
You say the threat level is low.
Yeah,
but not
still
zero.
Present. Yeah, no, they literally said like, you're gonna walk in and like nothing's gonna be there. And this was so our guys had flown on Ospreys a couple times in training, but I'd always been off doing something else. So I'd never been on Osprey before, and we were inserting on Ospreys for whatever reason on this mission. And also for whatever reason, they gave us a couple extra like infantry. We had some dudes bringing javelins in. That's what it was. We had javelin gunners coming in with us, and we had been told like, in addition to telling us that there was no one there, like they were sending us with extra stuff. We had extra ammo and extra explosives, and just like things were weird. And we go in on these Ospreys, and we're coming in to touchdown. And man, I'll never forget this. You'll love this. Like, so we're coming in. My team leader is on the back ramp. He's already standing up, and I flip my nods down, my night vision, and I click my little button on the PVS 14s, and it's just black. Nothing happens, and I panic. And I like take them off. I'm beating on them, and I put them back down and turn them on, and they turn on. And the second they turn on, you felt like the pings on the bottom of the Osprey, and I look out the back ramp, and it's like Star Wars out there, just tracers, RPGs, and we're like 6 feet off the ground, like final descent, unclipped, ready to go. I go from like panicking because of the night vision. The fuck is going on out there? And is some boot ass Taliban shot his RPG 30 seconds too early, or they would have shot. And man, I've been hating being on that Osprey because they're smaller than 53s, and we shoved the same amount of dudes in there like a can of sardines. And I changed my tune on that real quick because that fucking Osprey went from landing to like mock Jesus straight up into the air in a second and a half. It was, we almost had guys fall out of the back. It was so fast. And so like they abort, everyone takes off. Obviously, it's like super hot LZ. And I had friends that were like in the talk or the operations center kind of on the other side of this. So we kind of pieced this story together over the months and years that followed. And our company commander, who's like, they'd sent the rest of the battalion home, so he's like the guy for our unit in the country at the time, was like screaming at the pilots to like insert us, like no matter what, like put them on the
Oh,
ground. And they passed down in the bird, like the crew chief, he yells to one person's ear and they're passing it down like, we're going to the alternate LZ. And like I'm yelling back, we don't fucking have an alternate LZ. And I'm like, these assholes are gonna drop us off in the middle of the desert. We have no idea where we're at. And eventually we found out that the pilot who outranked our commander told him, I cannot in good conscience put these men on the ground right now. And he just told me to fuck himself and flew us back
wow.
to base. And it was tense. And initially they were like, load up even more ammo. Like, we're going right back in. And that mission ended up getting canceled. And shortly thereafter, I think it was like MARSOC with like Army Green Berets and a huge contingent of Afghan special forces went, and they like prepped the whole zone with like 80,000 pounds of ordnance, and they basically inserted in like a 2-week gunfight with like a bunch of casualties and shit. And I say all that to say that was 5 miles north of Sangin. That was so
Man.
like Sangin, which had been pacified, we pushed them all out. Fucking a 20-minute run away, or no, an hour run away.
Yeah.
It is just the wild fucking West.
Right up the valley.
Yeah. And to cap that story off, a buddy of mine ended up going to free fall school with the MARSOC commander that was on the ground. And I wasn't there for the conversation, but he was like, oh, you were like on that mission? I was like, why did your company commander send you guys out there? And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, we told them not to fucking go there. Like, we told them that was going to happen. So they fucking knew, dude. And they told us that there was no one there while they're like beefing up our attachments to send us into this hornet's nest.
You just don't. Oh, there's so much wrong. I know that was the end, but like, there's just so much. That is such a loaded, because you don't go anywhere without alternate LZs.
Oh my God.
Alternate comm freaks, alternate this,
just
alternate
backup plans.
CASEVAC locations. You just don't do it.
No.
Those are lessons that we learned for 20 fucking years.
Yeah, those don't matter, man. Because what are you going to do? They're serving ice cream and steak and lobster at the chow hall in 4 hours. So we got to make sure that we're there for that. So we got to get these fucking guys out the door,
Listen, I will say this at the very end. This doesn't, like what we're talking about, doesn't take away the patriotism. It doesn't take away the sacrifice that guys made. It doesn't take away none of that.
On the contrary.
Yeah. It should harden your resolve to say that we did it, but there's never hurt to say like, why? Because the government owes us that. The government owes us a good reason.
Man, like, we've earned the right to voice our opinions, and not everybody, like I said, not all my friends, guys that I was there with, have very different opinions than I do, and some of them have they feel the same way that I do. It's across the board, but I think we've earned that right to voice our opinions. And I want to echo what you're saying too. Is like, I'm not disparaging the absolute heroism so many dudes and the sacrifices. People ask me like, are you proud of it? And like, it's such a hard question, because like, am I proud of the mission that I played a part in? Like, on a big scale, not at all. But I'll forever be just incredibly proud of just the hardships that we all went through, the physical and mental and emotional struggles, and like the amazing feats that we've all witnessed, normal dudes rise to the occasion of, if that makes sense. And like that, I'm of course proud of. But I want to say too, is like, I think it's not just a matter of like, it's not just therapy, or whatever, or just bitching for us to say this. I think a huge part of the PTSD epidemic is guys just not able to come to terms with what they know is true, is that their fucking friends died for nothing. I think they fight this battle in their heads where they can't admit that to themselves, and they refuse to. And I think it's necessary. I think we have to come to terms with the reality of the situation. That's not to say we all have to agree, but man, there's got to be some kind of a reckoning, within our communities on like, at least recognizing the facts on the ground so that dudes aren't blowing their brains out watching the Taliban take over Kabul or whatever.
Yeah. I think now with the pullout having been 4 years old,
4 years ago,
4 years ago, we can now look back and say with the definitive certainty that, like, hey, look, it didn't work. It just didn't. It didn't work, guys. Like, there's comment. I mean, somebody send me a DM. And listen, I met good fucking dudes that were Afghan. I remember we had
oh, yeah.
This will be the last story I'll tell about this, but I know I said that a minute ago, but we had a 16-year-old interpreter. I'll never forget this guy. He loved America. He loved what we did. And he had a cell phone. It was like a flip phone. It was super shitty. And he had the ugliest pictures of these naked chicks on there. They were the ugliest chicks. And he barely spoke good English. He used to say, yeah, man, I'm going to go to California and I'm going to fuck all the bitches. And like, he would literally, like, dude, I'm telling you. And we used to tell him, bro, you'll have no problem. Like, cause he was like, I only got like 4 more rotations to do. And then I'll be, get his citizenship or whatever, But like, my thing is like, we were like, dude, if that's your standard, you're going to do great, homie. Yeah. You'll do great. But like, you never forget the good folks you met over there. That, like, there were some good Afghans that I was like, and they kind of reminded me sometimes when I doubted, and even now I look back and say, those are the people I really feel sorry for, because it's like they were, yeah. I mean, like, it's like John, if you listen to my very first podcast, John talked about, like, where was that woman? I remember that woman we seen on this patrol, and he's like, nowadays I just think, like, where is she today? Well, like, what is her life like today?
Yeah.
And that's a question that, as an older person who's kind of wised up and we've left it all behind, and now you just ask, like we didn't do it. We didn't fix it.
No, man, those are all humans over there. They love their kids and their moms as much as we do. Yeah. If not more, because it's a very close-knit tribal community. Dude, one of our Terps made it to America and enlisted in the fucking Marine Corps, dude. In the infantry. I swear to God, man. It's like, honestly, it gives me pause, because, like, man, he and I have a very different understanding of the situation. That this is a few years ago now, but yeah, dude, he enlisted in the Marine Corps. Like, God. He was that like proud to have, like, done what he did, and, like, stoked on us and, like, America and what we were doing. It's like, man, that kind of throws a wrench in my whole fucking shtick that I just gave you,
He's an outlier. We'll put it that way.
Yeah. No, it's sad. Dude, you mind if I throw you one more just funny story? No, ended on a funny note. Okay, man.
You're good.
Dude, so we like I said, they sent, like, our entire battalion home. They just fucking left us with this maniac of a commander out in the middle of the desert. So we were on this mission, and nothing happened. We came back, and we flew with the Brits for some reason, which are, like, fucking crazy pilots, by the way. Like, they're guys that came in with medevacs were awesome, but, like, flying on British 47s, like, nap the earth or something. We're like, I'm getting sick up here, man. It was cool. But because we're flying with them, they gave us these, like, these British flares. We had to, like, mark them because it's what they were used to. And so when we came back and we were turning in all of our ordnance, we had sent our battalion, like, ammo technicians home. So they just picked some fucking random, like, PFC, and, like, Wusa, you are now the ammo technician. And so we're in this little, like, metal can of a, building of a room, like the team room. I don't even know where we were. It wasn't our room, but it's just an empty room with a table on it. And we've got a platoon's worth of ordnance sitting on this. And again, we rolled heavy. Like, every one of our 2 or 3 gunners had, like, 30 HEDP on them. And we got grenades, we got laws, we got mortar rounds. We're carrying 60s out there with it. We got, you name it, it's sitting on this table. C4. And this fucking idiot picks up this British flare, and he's holding it in his hand, and he goes, twist left, pull up, twist right, push down, and he fucking shoots it off. in the
Oh
ordnance
my
room. Yeah, he
God.
just read the instructions and followed him step by step into it. And he shot this flare, and it shaved my buddy and like gave him a haircut flying by his head.
Oh no.
And it explodes in the room, and I'm standing in the middle of the room, and I'm seeing my buddies just like dudes are diving out the one door and the one window, and I had just enough time to think like, well, I'm not near a door or window. Like, it's been a good run, but that's it for me. And you talk about, and these, they couldn't fry anybody because it wasn't his job, and they just made him the ammo tech. And
Oh man.
so if they went up the chain and be like, why is he the ammo tech? Why, so
That would have been more questions than answers.
dude, they just wrote that one swept that one under the rug, man.
Man.
But,
Dude, was it like a metal can building like in 29 Palms? You know where it's like, yeah, okay.
yeah,
So it's yeah, God, I bet that bitch. Oh man, I would have paid money to see that.
It was wild, man. I mean, I'm just like, it was just like, oh, I guess because you didn't know it was a flare at first. It's like just something on the table full of bombs just blew up.
Now, was it like a? Do you remember the Green Star, Red Star clusters we had?
It was something
it
like that?
Yeah,
it was like a big. It wasn't a pen flare. It was like a big flare.
It was like a fucking firework going off up in
straight
that
up,
bitch.
dude. Yeah, it was like a British star cluster. Yeah.
Holy shit! I bet somebody shit their pants,
dude. I mean, I didn't literally, but I just have this recollection of analyzing where I was in the room. Like, I'm not getting out of this motherfucker. So like, that sucks.
Bro, you're about to pull one of those where it's like that, unfortunately it's like you're thinking I'm going to be a casualty after all this bullshit.
Yeah. But, and again, we didn't know, we found out the story later. Just all, all that's happening in the moment is like shit is exploding in the ammo room.
Oh,
not good.
So, all right, I guess I'll be remiss if I don't ask, just since we spent this whole podcast talking about, what we originally wanted to talk about, that we talked about offline. But so I guess my final question is just to sum things up is, you did all that, but how are you today? Do you think that you're where you want to be? Like when you look back at and I'm not saying you have PTSD, but when you look back at the PTSD and when you look back at the trauma and all that, like, what did you do to just kind of, and I'm not saying that we still don't have feelings about things, obviously we still have opinions. We just spent 2 hours.
Yeah.
But, like,
yeah, man. Thanks for asking. I'm good today. But it took a decade before I started to feel like a person again. And the way I've described it is for years. I mean, to this day still, but it's less. I felt like I had essentially 2 movies going on in my brain. One was what was happening in front of me, and one was just like replaying.
Yeah.
The deployments and other things in life, but just like, and it just nonstop. And no matter what else I was doing, that other tape was, taking up half my bandwidth. And over time, I've managed to push that to where it's a lot less. And sometimes it's not there at all. Obviously, leading up to like a talk like this, it kind of comes to the forefront again.
Yeah.
And then for me, so to be perfectly honest, right off the bat, I self-medicated a lot. I was a raging alcoholic before I was legally allowed to drink. And kind of continued that. And then I did a bunch of other drugs. And I'll get on a soapbox here a little bit, but man, the best thing I ever did was I think it was June 5th, 2014. I finished a beer. I said, I wonder if I could make it till Christmas without having another one. And I've never had another drink since then. It's been 11 years now.
Wow, man, that's awesome.
And man, I probably wouldn't be here if I hadn't made that decision. And then I quit the weed out 4 or 5 years ago now. So I've been stone cold sober for, let's say, 4 years now.
Just raw dogging life.
Dude, raw dogging life, man. Which, to be honest, was a real struggle for a couple of years, really. And now I'm to the point where I thrive on it. I really enjoy it. I take pride in it. And then not that I'm like telling everybody about it, but
yeah.
And like there's nothing, man, you put a gun to my head, I'd really have to think about whether to take a drink or not, honestly. There's nothing that would make me do another one. I had one sip of Tibetan yak wine in a trip I got to lead through Tibet. I thought that was a cool thing.
Yeah, that's pretty tight.
But yeah, and then I really went. I found a lot of solace in like the wilderness, and I pursued going on bigger, better trips in the wilderness, which led me to be a mountaineering guide for a number of years and ski guide, and kind of transferred that into being a hunting guide here where I live now. And yeah, just really focus on like getting out. And for a while, it took the form of just beating my demons to death on the bottom of my boots. And it's transformed a little bit since then. But yeah, getting outside, getting out with good people, going on trips, going on adventures, doing hard shit that honestly, like I get to use a lot of my skills, my hard skills, and evolve them as well. Did numbers for me. And then something else I'll mention for any guys that are struggling out there, we as a platoon, and we've kind of started to waver on this, but we pretty much did an annual platoon reunion every year for most of the last 15 years. Last 2 or 3, it's been tough. Almost everyone's got families now. But no, we made it a real point that we all, and not everybody would show up every time, but enough of us would that it kind of reset us for the year. And I really credit that with, knock on wood. We got some guys that are struggling. No one's killed themselves out of our platoon, whereas the other ones in my company have all lost some fucking hitters to suicide, man. Some good dudes.
Man.
But yeah, getting out and doing stuff with your boys that you were there with. I've tried some of these organizations where they, put you with a bunch of vets, and I fucking hate it, man. They're all like, I don't know. I'm not trying to throw shade, but like, they're all a bunch of fucking pugs.
Yeah.
And like, it's just.
This is a combat podcast. You're safe here.
Yeah, it just hasn't been for me, man. It's like, I'll go to this thing with like combat vets, and you show up and you're like, you already feel isolated alone. Then you're the only fucking combat vet at the event for the combat vets. You're like, the fuck, man.
Yeah, we could do a whole podcast on that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll throw it back at you. Like, it seemed like you're doing pretty good. But do you have any thoughts on how to manage everything coming home?
You are the. I want to say almost everybody exclusively has agreed that the outdoors. Being a farmer now. I said that 2 things saved my life. My wife and this job. Now, part of the problem with this job is it's 7 days a week. And if the chicken alarm would call me right now, I would have to be like, hey, I got to pause this dog. I got to get to the farm.
Yeah.
So that's my biggest fear doing these. But anyways, I've always said 3 things. Support system, the outdoors, and keeping your mind busy.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you have to constantly be outside gardening or whatever, but you need to keep your mind occupied. And look, some people can handle a little bit of alcohol, some people can handle a little bit of weed, but for the most part, I've seen guys exclusively cut out alcohol. Like some of the other guests here that I've talked to, that you've heard it, they've been like, bro, I smoke a shit ton of weed. And I'm like, all right, cool, dude. Like,
yeah.
But
I did that for a long time.
Yeah.
A lot of fucking weed. So I'm not hating on that, but I think I look at it as like it's almost good like emergency mental medicine. I think it's good to keep you alive when you're like putting that fucking Glock in your mouth. But like once you get past that stage, I think you got to hit a point where it's time to evaluate your habits, let's say.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was, I have a herniated L5S1 disc. So for me, it was a way.
Too.
Oh, do you? Well, join the club, my boy.
Two other ones too.
So like for me, it was more about the pain instead of taking medication. And that was, but even then, I still didn't use it like other people. I wasn't like, oh, in the morning it's wake and bake, dog, and then it's wake and bake at lunch, and then it's, you know what I mean? Like I was never that way. It would just hit it a little bit in the evening times and go to bed. Now, I know
Yeah.
dudes that can't sleep without it. Now, I
Yeah.
find that to be an issue. If you can't take a day off, if you can't take time off, then you got a problem.
Yeah.
But for me, alcohol was my big one. And so what I did was I started taking 3 months off a year. And now I'm to the point where even when I'm on those 3 months, which for me starts at Christmas, so at Christmas I'll be able to drink again.
Yeah.
It's about Labor Day to Christmas for me. But even then, I find myself now where I'm just like, you know what? I don't even like it anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'll drink. And then like, if I do go to a party and drink too much, which now at this point, it's like 4 or 5 beers and I'm hammered. And at that point, I wake up the next morning and go, fuck, I know why I hate this shit. You know, like, it just doesn't do anything. And then like if you get drunk and then you get drunk by yourself, you're reminiscing about the good old days and you're like, I should probably call so-and-so. And then, you know, and then it's just not good. Like, and then the more I get into health, because I'm kind of a bougie health person, like there is no alcohol that's good for your brain.
No.
Or for your body, like not even a drop. It is toxic.
Yeah, it is toxic.
Yeah, I mean, but if you can make it without it, that's cool, man. And I'm glad you're doing good, man. I mean, and that's kind of one of those things where it's like every year is 1 year further. But I started this podcast for you guys because I was like, the stories need to be put out there before we forget. You know, before we forget the details, before we forget that. And then the other reason is because there are dudes that are struggling that aren't where we are today. They can't just say like, yeah, I'm over it. Or I've struggled and I'm still struggling. And I put this out there for those guys to just kind of hear what we have to say. And maybe, I'm not saying me or you but maybe just one of these guests, they're like, you know what? I identify with that guy. And maybe if I take his strategies, I can do it. And that's my hope.
I hope so too, man. I think that's really cool. And again, thanks again for the platform to just come up and spew all my bullshit. But no, man, I mean, if there are any of you guys out there that are stuck with us through this, that are, you know, you're struggling and you know, reach out to somebody, reach out to one of us, reach out to one of your boys. I don't know, fucking go run a marathon. Go do something. If you're just sitting there, you know, drinking it or smoking yourself to sleep and just like stuck in a rut, like, man, you've made it through so much already. We all have. Just go do something because it can get so much better. You know, life's got up and down. So, you know, obviously we all still have our struggles, but there's life to be lived out there. And we owe it to our buddies who, you know, whenever I would, you know, climbing a mountain or going on a run or whatever, and like sucking and feeling bad for myself, my legs are burning. It's like, dude, I got buddies that don't have legs anymore. How much would they give to feel this feeling right now? How much would we owe it to the guys who didn't make it back to live the fullest, most fulfilling lives that we can. And not getting the way of ourselves doing that. It's kind of how I see it.
Man. Yeah. I mean, I've always had that thing where it's like, if the guys who wasn't here, the guys who didn't make it home, what would they tell you? What would they say if they found you drinking yourself to death in the living room by yourself? What would they tell you? They wouldn't tell you to be like, yeah, cry for me, dog. They would be like, no, bitch, get up and go do something with your life. Do
something, you lazy fuck.
Yeah. And I mean, like, the thing is the last thing I'll say is we peaked. Like, it's true. What we did flying in helicopters, being the assault element, the vast roping, the shooting guns at the enemy, being the tip of the spear, it was the epitome of everything we always wanted to do.
Bro, I literally spent 10 years trying to like outdo myself just to say that I hadn't peaked, but I think you might be right. I think we did. There's no way.
But I feel like I didn't. What had to move on was when I realized life can get better. There are things we still have to do. Like we raise kids, or if that's not your thing, the peak wasn't there. You can make it better. And it's okay, it won't be as sexy, but you'll be better. You can be happy again.
You can.
You know?
And, I'll throw this out there. Obviously we all reminisce. We miss time with the boys. I mean, when's the last time you laughed like you did in a fucking patrol base? You know what I mean? It probably at a patrol base. That being said, though, one of my, not triggers isn't the right word, but cues, I guess, is like if I ever find myself wishing that I was back in Afghanistan, that's a cue for me that I need to fucking change something in my life. Cause like as cool as some of that was, like a lot of it sucked, and like I'm not shitting on the good times. Again, like when's the last time you laughed like that? But if you're just sitting around like, oh man, I wish I was back there with the boys, like fucking get up and do something different and like change something in your life. Cause like I don't think that's healthy. I think there's better life to be lived than try not to get blown up or shot, walking around in the moon dust. So if that's you, this is your kick in the ass to go find something that you're passionate about and do it with everything you can.
Yeah. Well, all right, guys. I think that was the best advice I'm going to end on. I appreciate it. Andrew, thanks, man.
Thanks again for the platform. It's been a blast, man. I'm sure we could keep going forever. So if you're ever short a guest, hit me up. I'm always happy to come back and shoot some more shit.
All right, man. Well, thanks a lot, and I appreciate everybody, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.